Picture this, a crowded room buzzing with conversation and laughter. In the midst of this vibrant scene, a young woman stands. She longs to join the conversation, but a strange force holds her back. It's as if an invisible weight settles upon her chest, stealing her breath and silencing her voice. Women who have been conditioned to believe that their voices don't matter. It's a silence that echoes through generations, passed down from mothers to daughters, reinforced by cultural norms and societal expectations. It's the silence of a woman in a meeting, hesitant to share her brilliant idea for fear of being labelled too aggressive or bossy. It's the silence of a woman in a relationship, swallowing her needs and desires to maintain a semblance of peace. It's the silence of a woman who has been told time and again to be nice, to be agreeable, to put the needs of others before her own. This silence, though seemingly benign, is a powerful weapon that can erode a woman's sense of self-worth, leaving her feeling unseen, unheard, and ultimately diminished. But what if we could break this silence? What if we could empower women to find their voices, to speak their truths boldly and without apology? This is the journey we will embark on together, a journey of self-discovery, empowerment, and ultimately, liberation from the shackles of silence. Meet Anya. A young woman brimming with ideas, she carries a notebook filled with scribbled dreams and aspirations. From a young age, Anya felt the weight of unspoken words. She was the quiet girl in class, praised for her attentiveness but rarely asked for her opinion. At home, she learned to navigate the silences between her parents, her own voice becoming a whisper lost in the din of unspoken tensions. Anya dreamed of becoming a writer, of weaving tales that would captivate readers and spark important conversations. Her words, she believed, held power. The power to inspire, to heal, to ignite change. But somewhere between the pages of her notebook and the world outside, Anya's confidence faltered. The world, she soon realized, wasn't always receptive to a woman with something to say. She noticed how men in her classes dominated discussions, their voices filling the room with an assuredness she envied. She observed how women, often brilliant and insightful, would hesitate, their words prefaced with apologies or masked in self-deprecating humor. Anya began to internalize these subtle cues, questioning the validity of her own voice. Was she being too sensitive, too eager to please? A seed of doubt, planted by societal expectations and reinforced by everyday interactions, began to take root in her mind. She found herself holding back in meetings, her carefully crafted ideas remaining unspoken. When a colleague, a man with a fraction of her experience, presented a similar idea with unwavering confidence, it was met with nods of approval. Anya, witnessing this, felt a familiar pang of self-doubt. Had she made a mistake by remaining silent? As time went on, the weight of Anya's unspoken words grew heavier. It manifested in a persistent feeling of inadequacy, a nagging sense that she wasn't quite enough. The once vibrant dreams scribbled in her notebook began to feel distant, replaced by a growing fear of judgment and rejection. Section 3. The Language of Dismissiveness. Anya encountered dismissiveness in various forms. Patronizing advice from older relatives focused on finding a husband instead of her writing career. Casual sexism from acquaintances who chuckled and asked, "So, what do you really do?" Each instance chipped away at Anya's confidence, making her feel less important. Anya knew she couldn't continue down this path and had to reclaim her voice. The air crackled with forced pleasantries. Anya found herself seated at a dinner party hosted by a distant relative, surrounded by people she barely knew. The conversation flowed around her, a torrent of opinions on politics, travel, and the latest stock market trends. Anya, usually brimming with thoughts and observations, found herself strangely mute. Her attempts to interject were met with polite smiles and a subtle redirection of the conversation back to the male voices dominating the table. She watched as her partner Mark effortlessly navigated the social dynamics, His anecdotes met with laughter and engagement. Each chuckle felt like a tiny pinprick to Anya's already deflating ego. She yearned to share her own experiences, to offer her unique perspective on the topics being discussed, but the familiar weight of self-doubt held her captive. Each time she worked up the courage to speak, a voice in her head whispered, "What's the point? They're not interested in what you have to say." A particularly lively debate about a recent political scandal erupted across the table. Anya, who had been following the issue closely, felt a surge of excitement, eager to contribute her informed opinion. She waited for a pause in the back and forth, took a deep breath, and began to speak. "I actually think," she started. But before she could finish her thought, a loud guffaw from the other end of the table drew everyone's attention. A man Anya vaguely recognized as Mark's colleague launched into a boisterous story, effectively derailing Anya's attempt to join the conversation. No one seemed to notice, or if they did, they didn't acknowledge the interruption. Mark, engrossed in his colleague's story, didn't even seem to register Anya's attempt to speak. The message was clear. Anya's voice, her perspective, simply didn't matter in this space. As the evening wore on, Anya retreated further into herself. A quiet anger began to simmer beneath the surface of her carefully constructed composure. It wasn't just this one dinner party. It was a pattern that had been repeating itself throughout her life. The constant silencing, the subtle dismissals, the way her intelligence and insights were so easily overlooked. She glanced at Mark, his face animated as he engaged in a lively debate with another guest. Did he even realize how often she was silenced? How her voice was consistently relegated to the background noise? A wave of resentment washed over her, hot and unexpected. The weight of all the unspoken words, all the stifled dreams and ambitions pressed down on her chest, making it difficult to breathe. She felt a growing disconnect from Mark, a chasm widening between them with every ignored comment, every dismissed opinion. Later that night, as Anya lay in bed, unable to shake off the oppressive weight of the evening, a single tear rolled down her cheek. Mark, already asleep beside her, stirred slightly. "Bad dream?" he mumbled sleepily. Anya hesitated, tempted to confide in him, to articulate the frustration and hurt that had been festering inside her for so long. But the words caught in her throat, choked by the fear of being perceived as oversensitive, of making a big deal out of nothing. "No," she whispered finally, her voice barely audible above the sound of her own ragged breathing. "Just a long day." She turned away from Mark, burying her face in the pillow, the silence in the room now deafening. Something had to change. She couldn't keep living like this, allowing silence to extinguish the fire within her. This was Anya's breaking point, the night she resolved to reclaim her voice, no matter the cost. The following days were shrouded in a heavy silence, but this time it was different. It wasn't the familiar silence of societal expectations or self-doubt that had plagued Anya for so long. This silence was a deliberate act, a wall erected between Anya and Mark. Every unanswered question, every missed opportunity for connection, added another layer to the invisible barrier that separated them. Mark, oblivious to the source of Anya's sudden withdrawal, responded with a perplexed frustration of his own. He attempted to breach the gap, only to be met with curt responses and averted gazes. The apartment, once a haven of shared laughter and whispered secrets, now felt suffocatingly small. Each shared glance was a silent accusation, each unspoken word a testament to the growing distance between them. Anya, lost in her own world of hurt and resentment, barely registered Mark's attempts at reconciliation. She was trapped in a cycle of silence, unable to articulate her pain, yet unwilling to let it go unacknowledged. One evening, as the tension reached a fever pitch, Mark slammed his coffee mug on the counter, the sound echoing through the tense silence of the apartment. Anya, he began, his voice laced with a mixture of exasperation and concern. What is going on with you? You've barely said 2 words to me all week. Anya, startled by the outburst, flinched but refused to meet his gaze. She busied herself with clearing the dinner dishes, her movements mechanical and detached. Nothing, she mumbled, her voice barely a whisper. I'm just tired. The lie hung heavy in the air, a stark contrast to the storm of emotions raging within her. Mark, sensing her withdrawal, reached out to touch her arm, but Anya instinctively pulled away. Don't, she choked out, her voice thick with unshed tears. Just leave me alone. The words, sharp and laced with a bitterness she hadn't intended, hung in the air long after she'd spoken them. Mark stared at her, his face a mixture of hurt and confusion. That's the problem, Anya, he said, his voice quieter now, laced with a weariness that mirrored her own. You're never willing to let me in. You keep everything bottled up inside until it explodes. His words, though not entirely accurate, struck a chord within Anya. Was she being unfair? Was she pushing Mark away just as she felt silenced by the world around her? The weight of her own actions, her own role in the growing chasm between them, settled upon her. The silence stretched between them, but this time it felt different. It was no longer a wall of defense, but a space for reflection, a moment of painful self-awareness. Anya realized that her silence, far from protecting her, was pushing away the one person who genuinely cared. A single tear escaped Anya's tightly shut eyelids and traced a path down her cheek. She longed to explain everything, but the words felt impossibly large, stuck in her throat. All that emerged was a choked sob. In that moment, Anya made a choice. She would no longer be silenced. Anya's journey to reclaim her voice had reached a critical juncture. Mark, witnessing Anya's tear-streaked face, felt a surge of empathy wash over him. The anger he'd felt moments before dissipated, replaced by deep concern. He closed the distance, gently cupping her face. Hey, he whispered, it's okay. I'm here. His touch sent a jolt of conflicting emotions through Anya. She yearned for his embrace, yet fear held her back. I don't even know where to begin, she stammered. Mark gently led her to the couch, offering silent support. The silence between them transformed into a space for healing. With a deep breath, Anya began to unravel her frustration, her voice gaining strength with each moment. She spoke of feeling silenced in the world and their relationship. She shared her fear of judgment and struggle with societal expectations. Her silence had been both a prison and a shield. Mark listened intently, absorbing her words with empathy. His frustration was replaced by tenderness. He reached for her hand, offering comfort and reassurance. I had no idea you felt this way, he admitted, his voice laced with genuine remorse. I'm so sorry, Anya. I never meant to make you feel small or insignificant. Your voice, your dreams, they mean everything to me. His words pierced through the armor Anya had constructed around her heart. For the first time, she believed her voice truly mattered. That night, a shift occurred in their relationship. Anya, emboldened by Mark's support, made a conscious effort to speak her truth. She started small, offering her opinions more freely. She began to write again, her words flowing with renewed purpose. Her voice, once muted by self-doubt, now resonated with clarity and strength. Anya's journey, though deeply personal, reflects a universal struggle faced by women across cultures and generations. The insidious nature of silence, the way it can chip away at one's sense of self-worth, is a shared experience that transcends individual circumstances. But Anya's story also offers a glimmer of hope, a testament to the transformative power of finding one's voice. It highlights the importance of open communication, of creating safe spaces where women feel empowered to express themselves without fear of judgment or dismissal. Breaking the silence starts with small, deliberate acts of courage, speaking up in a meeting, sharing an idea, expressing a need. It's about challenging the status quo, pushing back against the subtle and overt ways society tries to silence women's voices. It's about recognizing that our voices have power, the power to inspire, to educate, to create change. When one woman finds her voice, it creates a ripple effect, empowering others to do the same. Anya's transformation didn't end with her own personal liberation. As she embraced her authentic self, she inadvertently gave others permission to do the same. Her colleagues started seeking her input, recognizing the value of her insights. Her friends and family members felt comfortable confiding in her, knowing they would be met with empathy and understanding. Even strangers, sensing her newfound confidence, were drawn to her energy and openness. Anya realized that her voice wasn't just hers to use, it was a beacon of hope for other women who had been silenced for far too long. By embracing her own power, she was helping to create a world where all women felt empowered to speak their truths boldly and without apology. The journey to reclaim your voice may not be easy. It requires courage, vulnerability, and a willingness to challenge deeply ingrained societal norms. But the rewards are immeasurable. When you find your voice, you unlock your true potential, you inspire others to do the same, and you contribute to creating a more just and equitable world. So, I leave you with this. What will you say when you finally find your voice? What stories will you tell? What changes will you inspire?